So really, you're not going to, unless you can get all the way up the field and force a mistake, you're not going to get 2 sets in that time if you
No.
knock the conversion attempt off. So I think it was worth the go. Plus, Callum Watkins, okay, kicked badly in this game, 2 from 5, but he's not been horrible. I don't think, since he's taken over the goal kicking. He's not been as bad as I was expecting him to be. Let's put it that way. I expected him to lose the gig way earlier than now.
He's not the worst goal kicker we've seen by any means. Some more feedback. Shoddy and Mungo, Cass on fire, then they fall for Delaney's niggling and lose their way. Powell looked unhappy at the end, and I can see why. Good to get the 2 points, but at 24-0, they should be killing Leeds off with disciplined play.
Yep, Fatboy Rob says, piss easy win for the champions against the meaningless end of season cup winners, making it 9 in a row in competitive fixtures against the piss-stained pretenders from down the road. The result was never in doubt, despite a perfectly good try not being sent upstairs and an elbow in touch not resulting in no try. We're going to win the league. Again, hashtag come on you Ford, hashtag all of this was made up.
St David. The good thing about the international break in the round ball game was I got to catch up on this brilliant game of rugby league. Great skill, brutal defence, biffo and febrile ear-splitting crowd. Both sides will be right up there at the business end.
Rich Wilkinson said, after 15 minutes my arse fell out. After 80 minutes the loss felt like a win. We outscored Cass with some great, outscored tries, with some great performances across the park. Walker, Myler, Hanley were class. Watkins is different level, but our start let us down. Cass were great for 15 minutes. Gale disappearing in the second half. Leeds will take the most from that game. The bright future is at Leeds. We lost the game, but we are defo contenders for the big prizes.
Yeah, Cutthroat Jake said that was some game. Leeds was slow getting up to speed. Cass didn't need to be as red hot as they were to make us pay. It was great to see our tenacity kick in again as we clawed our way back into the match. To lose by only 1 point after going 24 points down bodes well for the future. Those who blame Watkins for missing the goal kicks need to remember Sinfield wasn't a brilliant goal kicker when he started.
No, didn't he cost them a cup final appearance once upon a time with a similar touchline attempt?
A semi-final, was it? Did he rush out the line? Oh, sorry, the therapy's not quite overridden that one yet.
Cutthroat Jake again, what's he doing?
Oh, 2 reviews.
Oh,
that's a yellow card.
Well, he's talking about some other players. Right, John Hamilton said, fantastic. No, I'm joking. We'll give John this one. Everyone gets one, as Spider-Man said on Family Guy. Ash Hanley is fast becoming the best winger turned centre I've seen since Carl Gibson. If he keeps this up, Liam Sutcliffe may not get back in.
There we go. John Hamilton said, fantastic game with a cup final feel to it and one of the best matches I can remember. Felt a bit sick after the first 20 and was expecting a tough night. Webster casually pulling the ball off Handley early on summed it up. Leeds woke up and showed some character to pull it back. Interesting tactical change to take Parcell off. Can only think it was to bring him back fresh later in the game to make a bigger difference. Now, I noticed this and I thought that when Parcell went off, that's when they sort of got a bit of a lift. When they were slightly more unstructured coming out of dummy half was when they seemed to pick up and wake up a bit.
Yeah, definitely gave a bit of a zip. I'm not sure. I think it was as much Walker at fullback kind of became a lot more of a threat. He was running more, cutting lines around the back. So maybe because he's played the last couple of games, he played the last game anyway, didn't he? At least maybe there's that familiarity, whereas Golding's been nursing an injury, but yeah, I agree. It did change things up a little bit. Joshua's granddad said, as you may have gathered, I rate Chris Kendall as one of the most incompetent match officials of all time. So when I saw he had the Leeds cast gig, I thought that's another good game ruined. After watching the recording, I hold my hands up and thought he had an excellent performance. Hope it's a sign of more to come. Still don't want him anywhere near the proper derby come Good Friday.
We'll find more about that out tomorrow. Now, Chris Kendall, I was trying to work this out on Friday night. He looks like a sitcom actor, but I can't work out who.
Right, are we talking British sitcom or American sitcom?
British sitcom. We'll have to leave this one out for the listeners because I've been racking my brains. He looks like someone who is in a sitcom, but I cannot remember which sitcom or who it is. So that's really helpful.
British sitcom of the modern era, of the 90s.
Recent times, yeah.
Recent times. Right, I'm going to get a picture up. Whilst everyone is listening at home, you should be doing the same thing. and getting a picture of Chris Kendall up on your devices to see who he looks like. And I'm going to have to say, he looks a little bit like that bloke who was on that thing on Sky One about the world ending, and he had like a twin.
Oh, I vaguely remember it.
Does he look a bit like that bloke? It looks vaguely like that bloke. That's the only bloke I can think of. I think that bloke's been in other stuff too, like Gavin and Stacey and stuff like that, but that's the only bloke I can think vaguely.
Yeah, I'm going to have a think
Listeners,
about this one.
Give us a shout on who you think Chris Kendall's lookalike is, and be kind. We finished with Ollie Smith on the fan reviews, and it says, very impressed with our start and looks like back to our best from last year. However, some soft tries to concede, allowing Leeds back into the game, and we looked poor second half. I'll put that down to a lack of match practice, but a win is a win. McShane was excellent and man of the match for me.
There we go. So, what did you make of this one then? Did you catch up this one on Saturday?
Well, I watched the first half when I got home from the Wigan game, then fell asleep and watched the second half on Saturday afternoon. And yeah, it was an exciting game. I think the size and noise of the crowd added to the excitement. Because I don't necessarily think the quality was always there, particularly in the second half from Cass's edge defence. They were the really, really good Ash Hanley try, his second one. Don't want to take anything away from him, but just before that they'd been cut apart, I think, by a break as well, and then there was the whole kick through as well for Hanley's try, and then the Callum Watkins try on the opposite side of the field as well. Was it his second? It was his second too.
Yeah,
they
second.
were both pretty weak one-on-one defensive misses and people not covering for each other, but great play by the individuals from the Rhinos too. I think it's hard to say that Castleford were the better side, and it's hard to say that Castleford thoroughly deserved the win, but they hung on, and that's credit to them, because they've not been firing on all cylinders this season. They've not been scoring enough points compared to last year, and they've certainly, they've not been playing a lot of games, as we know. They've only played a handful of games, so maybe they're not tested out for the back half of a game, especially if they've had a few players off, because Thingy, what's his name? We just mentioned him. Jake Webster. He went off, didn't he, with a nasty looking head knock. So yeah, and
that Gale drop goal did feel like he was almost kicking his frustration away from all the scrapping and nonsense he was getting into just before that. It almost felt like he was really kicking it just to put his foot through the ball.
Yeah, because
you could feel the frustration come out of it.
Yeah, because really they'd not played any good rugby for nearly 20 minutes by that point, and so they just hadn't, and he hadn't had any opportunity to impose himself on the game. And he doesn't normally kick from that far out, but obviously with the timing of the game, really good play by him to set it up and get in position and execute the skill, and it proved to be crucial.
Yeah, it did as that second half. Do you think the Singleton one would have been yellow had all the stuff in the first half not happened?
I don't think the Singleton one should have been yellow. I didn't think it was severe enough. I think it was a slightly mistimed tackle that took the neck more than the chin, really. And it wasn't like a swing. Unless I'm misremembering, I didn't think it was a particularly a strong swinging arm or anything like that. So maybe it was a matter of Kendall trying to take the heat out of things before it got out of hand, because he kind of, I think I was reading on Twitter after the game, and Ian Smith, the former Super League referee, in a conversation on Twitter had said about maybe one thing Kendall didn't quite get right, because he got almost everything else in the game right in his opinion, was bringing the two players together at the Gale and Delaney incident, rather than bringing them separately to talk to them separately, because obviously emotions were still so high.
They hadn't cooled off enough. Yeah,
behaving like idiots, really.
Yeah, and I was almost surprised he didn't, perhaps because you could see other referees would have reached their pocket at that point and said, right, you've brought you together, you've mucked about, right, go and sit down.
Yeah.
That would have been perfectly legitimate.
But watching the game in a bit of a vacuum to the actual, as it was on the night and stuff, I didn't understand why there was any sense of a problem with the referee. I mean, obviously the speed of the game wasn't as fast as Leeds wanted it, but we talked last week about how sometimes the speed of the game is faster than it should be because Leeds take an advantage that isn't really theirs to take sometimes, and Mr. Child pulled them up for it last week, and obviously they weren't getting even the opportunity to do that this week. It didn't feel like a slow game. Obviously some of the rucks were not necessarily squeaky clean, but it didn't feel like a slow game to me, particularly in the first 20 minutes of that second half. It was rapid.
The first sort of stanza of that second half, it really came out and it was very quick, and I thought actually in terms of letting the game flow, he did very well. What I think he could have done, as said, it was just inserting his own control a little bit more on it. But I didn't feel really he was particularly bad at all. I mean, as you know, the famous critic, I didn't particularly notice him for large parts of it.
No, other than when the players made the situation untenable for him.
Which meant he had to come into it. But I think for a lot of it, he wasn't really in my consciousness, which is a sign he's done very well.
Seen us, Daryl Powell has had his view on something and been completely misguided and out of touch with what the match officials are supposed to do, and Cas fans will blindly follow that. Maybe we should cover the Ryan Hall try that Rob brought up in a classic bit of post-truth Daryl Powell rhetoric. There, to you,
it was a good move.
For you, was there enough solid evidence to overturn that to make it a try?
I think it was. I think it took some scoring, but I think that was perfectly legitimate in terms of a try. I mean, I think we've seen a lot softer ones that have been given.
I think every angle to me suggested the ball was down before the elbow.
Yeah, and I'm slightly surprised it went up as a no try, if anything.
But again, seeing those sorts of finishes, but it was very close. It wasn't even bang bang really. It was one.
It was more. It was probably the
pace.
It was the pace of it as much as anything, which is why it did go up there.
If there was any reason for it not getting given, it was the forward pass by Ash Hadley in the offload.
Well, I think Leeds fans will call that extremely flat, but and I suppose the one thing we do need to touch on, and I almost feel, I do feel sorry for him, was Mikola Lejki's play the ball.
Oh, right. God, I saw a few of them this weekend. There was one that wasn't called in the Toronto-Rochdale game really near the end that could have had a big impact on I think it was that game because I was watching it last night on a rerun on Free Sports, and I think it was in that game that happened. But yeah, there was a few dodgy sideways play of the balls in this weekend's games that I saw, but that was hugely unfortunate.
It was, and the timing as much as anything. When Leeds did have that momentum and they were working their way up the field, it is one of those.
Yeah, was it on about tackle 3 or 4 of the set?
3 or 4, yeah.
And it was going to be their last possession, wasn't it?
Yeah, so they would, and they were working it infield to set up for that.
Yeah,
for
it
that
was just
drop goal.
Halfway, weren't it?
To give them the space to at least attempt something. So but I mean, I thought Lejki actually had a fairly good game all round. He's a player who's impressed me a few times when he's big and strong and he does that well. But he does like his offload almost a little bit too much. I think he needs to work on just being a bit judicious and knowing when to offload and when not to, as much as anything, to make him more unpredictable for defenders.
Yeah, I haven't seen any recaps from the disciplinary as well. Yeah, I've not seen if there's any charges. Obviously there was the Paul McShane alleged stamp, but from my point of view that was nothing to see here. It was accidental for me, pretty obviously accidental. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it looked like something that happens rather than something there was any real intent behind or any nastiness that was driving it.
Maybe there hasn't been any charges this week, so that's why there's no press release on the Super League website for it. So there you go. Right, stats. Leeds had more ball, made 196 more metres, 5 breaks to 3 and 5 tries to 4, plus a huge 6.3% better team tackle success. They did, though, lose the game, along with the error count 11-6 and the penalty count 10-8. So, maybe just not quite good enough execution there for that. From the winning cast side, the men who stood out on the stats were 1 try assist and 44 tackles from Paul McShane, who is the top tackler in Super League this season.